and also teach other children of other faiths about our own faith.
When you say our faith, your faith is?
For example, I teach in a Catholic school,
Yeah.
and we have a general collective worship. And through this, some children who do not belong to the Catholic faith or do not practice the Catholic faith, they are able to learn about what the Catholics believe and practice. And the children themselves who are Catholic also broaden their faith through that act of worship.
And Andrew Copson, is it such a big deal?
Yes, I think it is. I think it's a big deal for two reasons. Now, you say that many schools don't comply with the law, and that's true of secondary schools. Most of them don't. 90% of primary schools do comply with the law, and of course that means that it is still a problem. The other reason why it's a problem is that the law as it exists prevents the development of better practice. You know, we know that good assemblies, good inclusive assemblies can build school community, can increase ethos, can be educationally and developmentally useful for children. But as long as this law exists on the statute book and we have to sort of cough and sort of defend it, and bishops have to say, oh, well, I sort of, you know, worthship or whatever, and play with words, that best practice isn't going to develop.
Let me bring you on to the other aspect of religion in schools. Are you, as root and branch, opposed to religious education being taught at schools?
Well, religious education, unlike worship, has come on a lot conceptually in the last 60-odd years since the Education Act.
So are you happy with it as it stands?
No, I'm not happy with it as it stands.
What's wrong?
I think, well, there are various... In many ways, it's still a throwback to an earlier time in that, for a start, it's not on the national curriculum, which makes it incredibly difficult to regulate it. It also fails to adequately include the views of what, according to some surveys, the vast majority of 12 to 19-year-olds, which are non-religious perspectives on questions of meaning and purpose and value, and it needs to include those a lot more. It needs to become a lot more comprehensive of various secular and religious responses to these questions.
Bill Moore.
I would resist the temptation to go down the road of having a national curriculum for religious education, because local need does need to be taken into account. The local communities need to be reflected in the learning that goes on. I think one of the things that we do need to bear in mind in all of these issues is it is extremely complex. I mean, people have talked about the importance of learning about other faiths. One of the dimensions of religion in school, or faith in school, is learning from other faiths and worldviews. And good RE does incorporate, I mean, it has to incorporate the needs and the views of the children and young people in the classroom, including those of no religious faith or who are uncertain.
Is it your view that all RE should exclude any proselytising for one particular faith?
Yes, very much. All religious education should exclude proselytising.
Richard Dawkins, from your perspective, presumably you wouldn't be entirely opposed at all to the idea.
I would be thoroughly in favour of education in the Bible as literature. You can't understand English literature without the Bible. You can't take your allusions. And that's an aspect of what the bishop was saying. Is absolutely right. This is a Christian country. Historically, it's a Christian country. You can't understand English history or English literature without a knowledge of the Bible. And by the way, I think one should say that the act of collective worship, I don't approve of it, but nevertheless, the Christian religion, especially I think the Anglican religion, is benign by comparison. If a child at the end of its school career wants to give up religion, the church will quite happily say, OK, go your own way. The penalty for apostasy in the Christian religion is not death. There is no penalty for apostasy at all in the Christian religion. The Christian religion is comparatively benign, and we should respect it as such.
Let me bring in we've got teachers in this audience who do religious education from different... Yes, in the back with the glasses.
Kate, I'm head of RE in a comprehensive school. Well, I don't see the problem. I mean, the kids love it. You've got to learn about religion. You've got to learn about the rocks and the rivers and the mountains of the world. You've got to learn about other people. I mean, and even more so, day by day, we have got to know about other people.
And are you absolutely, in terms of any faith, neutral about the relative merits of any faith?
Oh, yes, I'm an atheist, so I guess maybe inside I think I'm right. But, I mean, my school's very...
So you are not normative, though, in the application of your intellect to the class?
I don't know. I probably shouldn't say that because I probably am a little. But we're not apologetic. We're not confessional. I mean, the heart of RE is faith, kind of. And there is a problem there because we only do really learn about. And so, you know, this faith thing, that comes back to the problem of collective worship and the problem of faith schools.
Oona, just quick thought on this. Should all religious education in schools be entirely free of the individual preference of the school or the individual belief system that the school has adopted?
I think if you're a school with a religious character, an intrinsic part of that religious character is actually teaching that faith. But I think the word that you've got to keep in mind all the time is education. And education, by very definition, gives people an opportunity to reflect, discuss, share their thoughts and struggles. It doesn't mean in good religious education that there is any space for saying you can't have a view and you can't share it. And in Catholic schools, that's what I expect is going on, and I expect that they're learning about other faiths as well.
Are they all getting down the road that you'd like them to get down, having heard this discussion, Andrew Copson?
I think religious education has come on quite a lot in the past in our community schools, and I think it'll probably develop a lot in the future. I think it is a problem to try and apply those same... I think what we need to do is try and apply those same principles of good religious education to faith schools within the state system as well, though.
Thank you very much.
Do you think there ought to be trained people doing it? On my visits to school, I find far too many people untrained conducting religious education, and that is very, very dangerous.
A great lack of
We will
trained teachers.
pause there after the break. Does a belief in God offer the best framework for teaching moral values to our school children, or does religious conviction too easily come into direct conflict with a free and open society? That's in a moment. Welcome back. It's often claimed that religion is the best way to communicate moral values to children, and that without it, they won't understand the difference between right and wrong. Others, however, argue from the opposite, that the opposite is true, suggesting that religious values are actually in conflict with the moral values of modern Britain. Bishop Peter, it would be arrogant, wouldn't it, to suppose that somehow a belief in God gives you unique access or special access to the principles of right and wrong in a secular society?
The making of any kind of boundaries in a society depends upon the need for a cohesion in that society. And the Ten Commandments, for example, which have been the foundational documents for Jewish and Christian faiths and have been influential in others, were essentially in order to give society some cohesion. To my mind, there is a greater value in the concept of a God-shaped series of values, because we're called back to something that is beyond ourselves, and that's often very important.
Richard Dawkins, does a God-shaped perspective or set of values do any harm to the way in which children should be taught at schools?
Thou shalt have no other God before me, thou shalt make no graven image, thou shalt keep the Sabbath holy. What on earth's that got to do with anything to do with morals? That's the Ten Commandments, or at least 3 of them. It would be deeply depressing if the only way children could get